Thank you for joining us today for Jennifer Schaus & Associates complimentary webinar series. We're coming to you live from Washington, D.C. today. This year on Fridays, we are covering procurement playbooks. We'll take a deep dive into doing business with the agencies and departments with our panelists. On Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, we will cover the FARS supplements or procurement regulations for the agency and department. Fridays, we will cover the business development and marketing aspects of the corresponding agency and department. The full schedule and the sign-up links are on our website. We'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Virginia PTAC at GMU offers free one-on-one counseling to firms in Virginia on federal, state, and local procurement topics. Online resources and group trainings are free with no restriction on business location. If you are interested in learning more, please use the links provided to explore what PTAC can offer. And a special thanks to our sponsor, the Federal Business Council. The FBC creates and manages virtual and in-person meetings and events to connect appropriate industry and government thought leaders, product providers, and solutions with government programs that use them. The FBC works with mission-specific programs for a variety of agencies to connect government and industry in the form of in-person and virtual conferences, training events, policy dialogue, and outreach. Over the last 40-plus years, FBC has become a comprehensive resource for connecting industry and federal government. Today, we will be covering doing business with the United States Army. Let's meet our panelists. We want to thank our friends from FedMine. This is Archisa Mahan. Great to have you with us, Archisa.
It's great to be here. I am at FedMine, the Senior Product Manager at FedMine, which is now a GovSpend company. Excited to be here. Thanks for including us in this webinar series. And also, really, it's really nice to have our agency, small business representatives join us, as also the McLean Group. So thank you.
Thank you, Archisa. And direct from the federal government, we are pleased to introduce Kimberly Bueller. Thank you, Kimberly, for joining us.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this Army-focused session. I am the director for the Army's Office of Small Business Programs. In that role, we advocate for small business opportunities across the Army and do our best to help connect contractors with viable opportunities. Again, thank you very much, and I look forward to the presentation today.
Thank you, Kimberly. And we would also like to thank the McLean Group for joining us today and providing an M&A perspective on the moves and shakers within the agency. Thank you, Andy, for joining us today.
You bet. Thank you, Colton, and thank you, Ashisha and Kimberly for joining us on the panel. I'm looking forward to today's discussion. I always enjoy kind of getting into a deep dive about specific federal agencies and what some of the secrets are, if you will, behind the curtain to working with those agencies and what some of the trends and unique aspects are. It's Friday afternoon before Super Bowl weekend, so what would be more fun to work on today?
Thank you, Andy. And now we will take a look at business opportunities and outlook. Archisa, the floor is yours.
Perfect. So FedMine is a federal market intelligence company platform that actually integrates the 18 federal data sites into one easy-to-use platform and allows a lot of reporting and analysis that was not previously possible. We are now part of GovSpend, and GovSpend actually is the largest provider of data and purchase orders in the state, local, and education market. So it's exciting to bring both the platforms together to provide one unique solution to our clients. If we could get to the next slide. Today's session, we are really excited to talk about what's happening, and especially as it relates to the U.S. Army. As we look to either enter or grow in a specific agency or bureau, it gets to be very important to focus and understand the agency in terms of its awards, trends, how is it purchasing, as this really provides us the insights and that are valuable and sort of help us plan our business development strategy within a specific agency and then understand the new opportunities, and then then you go into your next stage of how do you decide which opportunities you really want to focus on. So when we look at the Army, just for last fiscal year, they did more than $120 billion, a rise of almost 5% over fiscal year 2020. And I love it when I see dollars going to a large group of companies. And in this case, we had more than 23,000 companies actually win those awards. I know the slides are going to be distributed, but you'll see within the slides, we've hyperlinked a lot of reports. So, our people, our viewers who are attending the webinar can absolutely see more information as we go through, as if they want to. The next slide, please. Just to give you more of a quick overlook, and again, this is where I think as we start understanding more and more about what's happening in the agency, this is just to give you a quick overlook in terms of how much is really being set aside, what are the various, what are your top NAICS codes and PSC codes, and just to give you a good idea of what is being purchased. If you could get to the next slide. So when I start looking at contracts that have been awarded at DoD, and while we had the 23,000 companies that actually won contracts, what's even more interesting, and which I actually really, really like, is the fact that 17,000 companies won more than $29 billion last year as small businesses. And that is the number that we are really looking at also to see how many small businesses are winning contracts. And it's, so that's what we have in terms of the small business contracts. Given the pandemic and, COVID, it gets to be even more important to understand what are the contracts that are being awarded under COVID, under the National Interest Action Code of COVID-19. And last fiscal year, we had more than $30 billion that were awarded. And if you start comparing it to previous year in FY20, we had just about $4 billion. These contracts that were awarded under the COVID NIA code were awarded to 881 companies. 23% of this was awarded as small business contracts. And I think that is amazing because especially when you think about the fact that you have the Pfizer's and all the spend that has gone to the large companies for the vaccines and things, to have almost 24% being awarded as small business contracts is huge, and sort of it tells a lot about an agency. I also want to point out that almost $640 million were awarded as SBIRs and STTRs. And again, as you're in various industries, it gets to be important to even see what is the spend in the various stages of SBIRs and STIRs. Next slide, please. Within the Army, we also have all the various components of the MATCHCOMs. And again, no surprises here, that the Army Material Command and Army Corps are your top components, especially when you look at the spend. And, and we'll talk a little bit about what's happening specifically in the Army Corps with the infrastructure bill that's been passed. So that's a huge opportunity for the future also. So next slide. So let's look at the Army overall, right? Terms of companies, again, no surprises with the COVID situation that we are in right now. Pfizer, Modernex, you see all these pharmaceutical companies, but you also see the Lockheed very much as part of one of your top 10 companies, as also the General Dynamics Land Systems and Oshkosh Defense. So it's a nice mix of companies, and it sort of ties into the top NAICS codes, which include your, the biological and the pharmaceutical production, but also includes your engineering and facility support services as some of your top NAICS codes, and your guided missile and military armored services NAICS codes. So again, when you look at your top NAICS code and you look at your top primes, there is a correlation. So it's always interesting to see that and derive those insights, if I can say that. Next slide. I always then like to look more focus in on the small business and the way how the contracts have been awarded as small business contracts, because you will start seeing a change in how the contracts get awarded in terms of its NAICS codes. And again, now here you see that the pharmaceutical piece is a small piece, relatively small, But now you see the other industries, whether we're talking about, the construction and the 2-3 NAICS codes, but we also then see your R&D and facility support services, remediation services, and that all sort of ties in when you start paying attention to the components, and that the Army Corps did account for more than $20 billion. So then looking at your facility support and remediation services NAICS code all tie in. And I think that's when you start using data to make those connections and see, figure out how that agency is buying. Next slide. So again, when I'm looking at an agency, specifically with a lot of the category management initiatives and strategic sourcing initiatives, it gets to be super important to see, how is the agency purchasing with regards on the large IDIQs and, the various GVACs. And again, no surprises, or it just depends agency to agency. At the top level, we do see, ITIS, Oasis, Alliant, all part of the top 10 vehicles. However, I can tell you that when you start going into the next level, so let's say if you go into the Army Corps, you will start seeing a different picture. You might see a lot more in terms of the various MACs and MATACs and things like that. So again, but this is just at the top level. So as you are, as new vehicles open up, things like that, it gets to be very important to understand what is that agency purchasing on which vehicle. Can you get on that vehicle? Can you create a relationship with people who are on that vehicle? And just that all is part of your strategy. So this is why I wanted to make sure that I, showed this specific slide. Next slide. Which sort of takes us into opportunities, right? So what are opportunities at an agency? And what should we be looking at? So typically, and this is when working with some of the companies that are most successful, yes, you have new opportunities that are based on new initiatives. And, you'll see that with that Infrastructure Act. There'll be so many new initiatives with all the cyber, funding and things like that. There'll be new initiatives. And these are really, and then you'll see opportunities that are based on an agency's need and the funding that's available. So the budget always becomes very important. And then we also want to look at contracts that are expiring that could be recompeted, especially those that are on vehicles that could be recompeted, or if there's a vehicle that's replacing an older vehicle, you want to understand what was purchased on those vehicles and make those tie-ins, understand what's going to be out, and start creating those relationships. Now, where do you get this information, right? You have access to the budget and program information that is made public. Look at the pre-solicitations, and I have a typo there, sorry. Look at the pre-solicitations and source assert notices in sam.gov. Again, gets to be very important. I've sat through so many agency briefings that tell companies that please respond to them, because a lot of times that is the way they do market research. And then create those expiring contract searches based on what you do. Use keywords, use your socioeconomic, status, and start creating those expiring contract searches. If you're on a GSA schedule or something, start looking at contracts that are expiring that are on those vehicles, because that's how you're going to understand the opportunities that are out there for you. And then you can start getting into understanding further which ones do you really want to focus on. So the next few slides, we'll talk a little bit about that. I love the Exhibit 53s and 300s. I think if you are in the IT business, it really, really gets to be very important to understand, what are the major investments that an agency has, what has it funded. So the Exhibit 53s really get to be important in getting that quick overview. This is a top screen from the FedMind platform, and as you can see, wherever possible, we start connecting the awarded contracts and the Exhibit 53s. But this is just to show you the type of data that is out there. and is available. And I would highly recommend people spend time on understanding the exhibits that are out there. Next slide, please. This goes further into Exhibit 300, where it gives you more information about a specific program that is there, and it tells you what the funding was. And if you start getting into the details of this, it actually has a lot of good information. Gives you the CIO rating in terms of that program initiative, whether it's in the red, yellow, or green category. Provides you not only the budget information or the funding information, a good description of what is included in that, but also provides you with sometimes the program manager's information. So again, if you are in the IT related industries, I would highly recommend that you spend time and understand the various exhibits. Next slide. So, I touched upon expiring contracts, and I again decided that I would sort of break it into what's awarded to other than small business and as small business. If I'm just looking at what's awarded to other than small business, I have more than $144 billion in contracts that are expiring in the next 12 months. And this is, based off the numbers I ran this week. Contracts do include, of course, the vaccine and COVID-related acquisitions. And the top NAICS codes include, your facility support services, engineering services, construction. So it's, again, a good mix of NAICS code, but sort of also tie in with how we saw, some of the agency purchases. So if we could get to the next slide. And here's a listing of the top contracts that are expiring, or the companies with the contract values that are expiring. Again, no surprises. Pfizer, Fleur International is the remediation one that we saw in the top NAICS code. They have contracts that are expiring too. But just to, again, it's a good way to see what's expiring. Now, if you're a small business, I would highly recommend that you look at these expiring contracts that might be with the larger businesses, because there could be an opportunity for you to create the relationship with these companies, which could lead to possibly some teaming, or just opportunities for you to be a subcontractor to them. So always important to look at that too. Next slide. My next slide is talking more about contracts that are running the same similar type of search with small business, using the same type of fundamentals of, let's understand what are your top NAICS codes, what are your set-asides, use keywords. I mean, if you can, use keywords to be further more fine-tuned to the searches that are out there. All of that really helps you get in a much better place and understand, is this an agency that you want to focus on? It might not be an agency that you want to focus on, depending on on the type of work that you do, right? So that's where using the information and getting a better understanding, and then coming to that realization, yes, I need to focus in. No, I don't. Yes, I do, based on this. So those are decisions that every company will have to make. Next slide. And this is a quick look at the top contracts that are expiring for small business. Again, it's a nice mix of all the various NAICS codes. So it's out there, all expiring in the next 12 months. And then the next. So this is a quick search. This is coming from sam.gov. Create your searches, search for pre-solicitations, search for sources sought. Save them, do keyword searches, but it is super, again, important to make sure that you're responding to these and follow them as they move through the next stages, whether they go from pre-solicitations to sources sought, through that entire process or not. But again, it's important to make sure we follow them. And then the next slide. So that's the way that we would really look at and how we've seen the most successful companies grow. With this, with the new infrastructure bill that got passed, I wanted to just sort of put a slide that talks a little bit about the infrastructure opportunities. And the Army has done a really great job of making sure that, they've tried to make a lot of this made it available to the public, which is amazing. So over $22.8 billion is budgeted in supplemental funding through the Infrastructure Jobs Act and that Disaster Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. We have more than $17 billion that has been awarded for civil work studies and projects. Apparently 15 feasibility studies have to be done, 19 construction projects. There's more than $1 billion that's set aside for the South Florida ecosystem restoration. There's $130 million in 2 pilot programs that target the economically disadvantaged community needs. And again, when you start reading this, it also sort of ties in with the administration's objectives, and you could see that flowing through. So I think it's always important to keep that in the back of your mind. I have almost $6 billion that's provided through the supplemental bill. $100 million is for studies for disaster caused due to Hurricane Ida. $3 billion is for construction of qualifying damage reduction and shore protection projects. Almost $1 billion for the Mississippi River funding, and half a billion dollars in projects in Louisiana. I could have written more about this because when I started going through this, there was so much of information. So I've also given you guys a link to the Army Corps page, which was really, really, really helpful too as I was putting this together. But yeah, I think so to sort of put it all together, it's important to understand what an agency is doing, focus in, look at keywords, see what's expiring, create relationships with the large businesses. And then, of course, the U.S. Army has an amazing small business office with a great mission, and I think they do a lot of amazing work in helping the small businesses. And I'm always telling clients, please create your relationships with your small businesses, business officers at an agency, because they are a valuable source of information. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me or reach out. And now I think I'm excited to hear Kimberly's presentation on, yep. So that's it from me.
Yeah, thank you, Archiza. And now we will move on to an inside perspective from the government. Kimberly, the floor is all yours.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Archiza. That was such a good briefing. It was chock full of really helpful guidance and recommendations for small businesses. It is really critical to understand the data, like you said, to understand who's buying what so that you can make those business decisions. And it really was one of the best presentations I've seen to help industry. So thank you very much. If we could go to the next slide. Okay, so, oh, I'm sorry, can you go back up? Great, thank you. So the Army.mil website is the main public facing page for the Department of the Army. However, if you want to get to the Army's Office of Small Business Programs more directly, the way to do that, the way we recommend, is to go to osbp.army.mil. And that is our public face to industry. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. We are really trying to push a lot of information through these social media platforms, particularly on upcoming engagements, as well as exciting contract opportunities, awarded contract opportunities. So I really encourage you, if you don't already follow us on one of those platforms, I invite you to do so. Next slide. So once you get to our website, what are you going to find? Well, we are really trying to build this out to be a one-stop resource for industry. We get a lot of recurring questions, of course, about, who do I talk to within the Army and what contracting opportunities do you have coming up? So a lot of the data, as Archisa showed you, a lot of the expiring contracts information, it's publicly available. You can do those types of searches yourself so that you have an idea of what might be coming up for recompete during a given fiscal year. That, combined with the budget information, is a very powerful tool for you. What we're trying to do is get our acquisition forecast, so what we're actually planning to buy this fiscal year, loaded up onto our website. As you could see, the Department of Army does a lot of contract actions in 1 year, and a lot of those are appropriate for small business. Right? We awarded over 29% of all of our prime contracts to small business in FY21. And when we look at the dollars that went to small business, it was over $3.7 billion more awarded in FY21 than in FY20. So really outstanding accomplishments, and I can assure you that everyone in the Army is working very hard to make sure that we maintain this level of contribution. It's very important for our economy. It's very important for building up our industrial base as well. Another thing that you're going to find, so the acquisition forecast, to back up one sec, the acquisition forecast will be posted up on our website by the end of the month. We are currently making sure that the ones that we have from the Army Materiel Command and the United States Corps of Engineers are ready for posting. The National Guard Bureau, who is one of our buying activities, theirs will be coming a little bit later, as well as will the Medical Command. But in terms of our spend and small business opportunities, Army Materiel Command and the Corps of Engineers really provide the highest percentage of those opportunities, as well as overall dollars. I do have one caveat on the Corps of Engineers forecast that'll be posted by the end of the month. It will not include those infrastructure projects, so the over $17 billion in infrastructure civil works projects. Although the projects have been posted, and those are publicly available on the Corps of Engineers website. So if you look for civil works, the projects are listed there. I believe their small business office is also going to be providing a link from their page so that you can find them more easily. So that's all new money. So, the acquisition forecast that will be on our website will be the recurring things that we plan to buy. Once the information on those projects is available, we'll be updating those forecasts. But don't wait. Go look at those projects now, because the Corps of Engineers is actively discussing what's appropriate for small business. So if you see projects there that you think are appropriate for small business, you know that you can do them, you know that you've got competitors in that space, don't be shy. Reach out to the Corps of Engineers and let them know what you think could potentially be set aside for small business. Some other things that you'll find on our website include our annual report. We did an annual report for FY20, so it really talks about, goes into more detail on what we buy, including our top NAICS spend areas, which you had a little bit of a preview of that. It talks about COVID-19. It goes down to the command level. We really go through and show all the data, not only through the procurement contracts, but also from assistance agreements, SIBR, those various programs. So the FY21 report will be posted hopefully by the end of second quarter or early third quarter. You'll also find links to all of our program managers, some general information on our programs, our top tips on how to do business with the Army. You will see links to all of our buying commands, and you will have the opportunity to see our, track our monthly performance data. So we update on a monthly basis how we're doing. We like to show that to everyone. And we also have ways that you can contact us. So if you'd like to set up a capability briefing, there's a contact us tab at the top of the page, and you can use that to fill out a quick form, get in touch with us. We'll try to set up a briefing. You can also just submit a question that way. We're happy to try to help answer any questions that you might have. Okay, if you could go to the next slide. Okay, so the SBA Scorecard. So, I really appreciate the kind words that have been said about the Army and the Army's program. We are very proud of the program. Like I said, we have a very long history of exceeding the goals that we have received from the Department of Defense. And the Department of Defense knows that where the Army goes, so goes the Department of Defense. And since the Department of Defense is a leader in the federal government achieving small business goals, I don't think it's too big of a stretch to say that the Army is the leader across the federal government in small business accomplishments, both in terms of dollars and percentage. So that's one of the reasons that we do very well on the SBA scorecard, and really contributing to making the DoD overall a success. But as we will proudly say, we're not just about goals, right? We are about the Army's mission. We are about meeting that mission through small business. We are about trying to find the best small businesses out there that believe in the mission as much as we do, are committed to providing our soldiers with the very best products and services that they need to keep them safe, to keep their families healthy, and to make sure that we can meet the mission. And when we're called, that we can deploy, we can fight tonight, is what we like to say. We're ready to fight tonight when needed, and answer the call. And over the past couple of years, I think we've seen that the Department of Army has been called to do more than fight tonight, but that what we're fighting, is some non-traditional actors such as COVID-19. So we've really been tasked to step up and help our nation, and that's exactly what we've been doing. In terms of our overall contributions and achievements in terms of small business, our support that we're providing, particularly for COVID-19, is having an impact on our overall numbers, and our trend lines are, not what we'd like to see, because we're doing a lot of big awards to, companies like Pfizer, in that pharmaceutical space. Luckily, Moderna was classified as a small business, so that helped us out in FY20. But we're doing a lot of help for our federal partners in making these big COVID-19 pharmaceutical awards, as well as some other categories. And I'm not sure where we're going to end up for FY22 as a result, but we're really pressing hard, and we're very optimistic due to those infrastructure dollars that'll help offset some of those COVID-19 impacts. But overall, we're very proud of the work that we do, and we're very proud of the work that our small businesses do as our partners in supporting the Army's mission. Next slide. So I did want to give you some insight as to what we have planned in terms of upcoming events. And on this list, so you'll see the link there to our learning events, which are posted up on our website. And the ones that have an asterisk are ones that are hosted by the Army. So you'll see that there are some events that we are participating in, and then there's events that we are hosting. So I'm very excited about the event that we have coming up on the 24th of February called Meet the Army OSBP. So that's my office. And this is our first virtual vendor engagement. We are planning to do these at least every 2 months. It'll be 1 hour long, and our first one is really designed to, help everybody understand what the mission of our office is. You'll have an opportunity to meet the various program managers who support the small business programs, as well as hear about our initiatives and upcoming opportunities. So some of the follow-on or subsequent sessions that we are planning is for one focused on the small disadvantaged business and 8A portfolio, and then a future one on the cybersecurity maturity model, which I know everybody's interested in. And we're certainly interested in having you join us for these events. If you're interested, please go to the link at the top of the page and you can register. I think we actually have about 300 contractors already registered for the Meet Your Army session on the 24th. So we're excited about that. And we will be taping it. We do have a space limitation. So if you're not able to register, we'll be taping it and posting it up to our website. And, based off of our total interest, it's possible we could repeat the session if we need to. We also did want to take a second to point out the Mission and Installation Contracting Command, or the MIC. They're having an advanced planning brief to industry from 7 to 11 March. It is virtual. I would highly recommend, if you are a contractor that provides any type of installation support, please look into participating in that. The MIC is really one of our primary commands in terms of small business achievement. They do a lot of great work there and have a lot of opportunity. The next one would be the AMCOM Advanced Planning Brief to Industry, and that's 22 to 24 March. Again, that is also virtual. And the AMCOM portfolio is primarily focused on aviation, missiles, UAS, those sorts of NAICS or product and service code areas. So again, a good opportunity to hear on very specific opportunities from both of those Army organizations. And then, we're very happy to have our relationship with the PTACs, and always happy to support their events, whether it be the Ohio PTAC up in 9 March or the Virginia PTAC 11 March. And we're also happy to partner with our industry association groups. Okay, next slide. So I was asked to, provide some tips on how to do business with the Army. I believe I mentioned that we do have some tips posted on our website, and that link is there at the bottom of the page. Really, it kind of just reiterates a lot of what our Jesus said to you earlier, right? Do your homework. Know who buys what in the Army and really focus on those activities. You don't want to spend your time trying to sell something to an organization that doesn't have a need for your product or service. It's also really important for us that you have some idea of what you're bringing to the table. The more specific you can be when you come to us, the better off it's going to be for you and for us. So if you see a specific sources sought or RFI and you have some questions about it, please ask, right? Know who your small business professionals are, form those relationships. And again, form those relationships with the people that are, actually at commands who are buying what you're selling. Be specific. Please, please, please respond to RFIs and sources sought. Please, please, please respond in full. If you don't answer every question that is on, in those requests, there is a high degree of likelihood that your response will be discounted, or that you will, the full range of what you can bring to the table will not be considered, simply because you didn't answer all the questions. It's also possible that if you come in and say you can do part of a requirement and not the full requirement, that we won't be able to build the case that there's 2 or more qualified small businesses who can do the work. So it's really important when you answer that you say how you and your partners, right, whether through subcontracting, joint venturing, partnership agreements, similarly situated activities. It's really important to say how you can help do that, how you're going to be able to do that full requirement, whether or not you would do 100% of the work yourself. So just some tips there about those RFIs and sources sought to help you be more successful. Always come from a position of, I understand what your mission is. Here's what I bring to the table. Be able to differentiate yourself from your competitors, and know what your value add is. Because we're focused on our soldiers, we're focused on reducing risk. What we need to understand is how you, as a company, are going to help us do that, as well as value, right? There is a limited budget. It's a lot of money when you look at the top level, but when you start dividing that up over the entirety of the Army and who has requirements, it gets very diluted very quickly. So, everybody needs to make, especially in this age of inflation, right? We're facing it in our daily lives. How do you make your dollar stretch further? The Army faces the same type of situation. So, understand that we are cost conscious and that we do need our small business partners to help us understand how you're going to be able to reduce risk and do it in a cost effective manner. Please don't come to us for things that you can go to and get educated from a PTAC, right? The PTACs are there to help you with a lot of the fundamentals, as well as some of the general information on how to do business with the government. Utilize them. They are great people. They want to help you. By the time you come to us, you should already understand all of that. Again, we need you to be specific so that we can really help you. General flyers, mailers, etc., don't really help us because it doesn't let us know what your company is really about and what your experience really is. So, please come to us so that we can help you. Okay, and I think I'm at the end of my slides here and at the end of my time. So Colton, I'm going to turn it back to you. And again, thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope that folks will follow us on our social media and join us for our webinars.
Thank you, Kimberly. And lastly, we will be covering M&A activities within top contractors. Andy, the floor is yours. Hello, Andy.
Hi, I'm sorry about that. It's a good guess. I had you on mute. But Colton, thank you very much. Artisa and Kimberly, those are fantastic presentations. Artisa, I really enjoyed the details you covered about where the procurement activities are and where those opportunities are. Getting into that granular level of detail is really helpful. And Kimberly, you touched on some fabulous resources, especially the industry days. A lot of our clients find that they build a lot of great relationships from those industry days, and those events can be very, very helpful for businesses. I'm Andy Smith. I'm a managing director with the McLean Group. I've been here for over 20 years. I'm one of the leaders of our defense, government, and intelligence practices. I've always worked on M&A deals with my career at the firm for a while. I also led our business valuation practice. I'm a trained CPA and certified in business valuation. I currently primarily focus on supporting M&A clients here at the firm. Is there a next slide, Colton? I'm not sure if there's an intro slide. Oh, perfect. As a short introduction to the firm, the McLean Group's a middle market investment bank, which means we really do two main things. We have a business valuation practice, which is one of the largest in the Mid-Atlantic area. We do over 400 valuations a year of middle market clients. And it's everything from supporting maybe a public company as it goes public or has SEC filings, we'll support them. But we also work with very small companies. We'll help them with maybe it's an estate and gift valuation, or maybe it's the very first time they've rolled out a stock option plan and need a valuation done. So it really exposes us to a very wide array of businesses in the federal contracting sector. And the second thing we do is mergers and acquisitions. We we have a core competency and skill in helping to sell businesses. That's the majority of that practice is sell side representation, helping owners figure out their succession plans and their exit strategies, which could be selling to a strategic buyer or to a private equity or to a management team, but finding that the best way for that company to grow and for the ownership to continue to grow and change over time. Now, our practice our firm has different industry focuses. Most of our work is in the defense, government, and intelligence space. We also have a practice that's focused on physical and cyber security, and as well as critical infrastructure. Then we also have a practice that does maritime and transport facilities market focus. The big thing there, I think, that makes our practice, our investment bank, unique from others is that valuation practice, because we end up touching so many different businesses and looking at the different valuation drivers. In today's presentation, we're going to focus on two things. One is the opportunities and trends that we see at the U.S. Army, really the trends from a buyer perspective and what we see happening in the marketplace and where there's a lot of transaction activity. And the second is to talk about some of the value drivers. I think we're asked this afternoon to focus on one of the many qualitative value drivers. And today we're going to talk about customer concentration, how to manage that and craft that as a business executive. Next slide. Let's jump in and talk about the Army and some of the specific trends and opportunities we see that are happening at the U.S. Army. The Army is a little different than some of the different agencies from a capital market standpoint. For example, in the intelligence community, you often see M&A transactions of companies buying into the intelligence community. It's very hard for people just to drive down to Langley or Fort Meade and figure out where those procurement activities are, what RFPs and who you send your proposals to. There are significant barriers to the intelligence community, and you often see M&A transactions of companies buying into that community to be able to play in it. The Army is a little bit different. It's much more transparent. There's many more opportunities. And some of the capital market activity we see related to the Army is really about contractors growing and expanding capabilities. Maybe they're doing a lot of cloud work at the Air Force, then they've got some great tools and techniques, and they would like to apply that at the Army as well. So you see more of the M&A activity of people trying to expand into those contract opportunities. And I want to talk about some of the areas here that we see that are hotter and a little more activity. The first thing to note is the Office of the Chief Information Officer at the Army. He just put out in October of 21 a digital transformation strategy. It's a very interesting document. It kind of walks through what their plans are in the IT services area. And there's a lot going on there at the Army, a lot of transition from legacy systems to the cloud. Cyber, of course, is a very big issue, as it is with all federal agencies right now, all organizations for that matter. But it's a very good document. It really walks through a lot of their strategic goals, which I think is useful for contractors to be focused on. Again, that's called the Digital Transformation Strategy. We also see a lot of excitement and enthusiasm around the Army Futures Command down in Austin. It's relatively new, being relocated down there, but there's a lot of technology, a lot of innovation, a lot of involvement with smaller contractors and bigs. And there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of growth coming out of that. So we are seeing people saying, "Oh wow, if you're working at the Army Futures Command, we would love to as well. Maybe we should acquire a company so we can strengthen those opportunities." The PEO soldier is always worth talking about. The lethality of the Army warfighter is one of the significant missions. PEO soldier is focused on making that soldier stronger and better and more lethal. And there's a lot of interesting opportunities there when you think of services and long-term product opportunities too. Army Cloud has to be touched on. There's a lot of cloud development going on. A lot of the procurement vehicles for the cloud, if it's within DoD or the IC, have finally been, I think, resolved. And you've got a lot more skill sets and technology to help transition the legacy systems to the cloud, which we'll see a lot more of activity there. We have to touch on the unmanned vehicles, and this is everything from ground vehicles. There's been a lot of growth in the ground vehicle area in the last several years. Just this last week, a Black Hawk helicopter was flown unmanned. So taking a legacy platform system of a helicopter and flying that unmanned is a pretty big development for the Army. And even this past week too, when the ISIS leader in Syria was taken down this past week, if you read the operational reports of that, the Delta operators used various unmanned unmanned techniques to help understand the hideout that the ISIS leader was in, and they say that saved lives because they were able to identify some of the booby traps and some of the risks that were involved in that mission. So the unmanned vehicles are still evolving and very important to the future of the warfighter. UAVs a little bit different with the unmanned aerial vehicles. I think is important to touch on separately. It's no secret that our country does not have the leading technology from a standpoint of an array of aerial vehicle technology, and that's a concern for us strategically. And there's a lot of R&D, a lot of opportunities there, and not just on the offensive side and the recon side, but also on the defensive side. How do you take down a swarm of drones? And there's a lot of challenges there, but it's definitely a great concern. We also want to touch very quickly on training with the forces coming out of Afghanistan and being drawn down in other places of the world. There is an increase now in domestic training as those troops roll back. So there are some interesting opportunities there, and with SOCOM with the special forces. Next slide, please. Let's briefly touch on value drivers. And on this slide here, we kind of talk about the four main kind of components of enterprise value as a business and its executives think about growing the business. There's really four main areas that we kind of group value drivers into. The first are the macro market forces, and there's really not too much you can control here. You can be aware of it, of what's going on in the macro market. Those conditions are obviously very important. I would say what's happened in the past 2 or 3 years is there's been a new light that's shown on federal contracting. More investors have realized that if our country has a pandemic or goes to war, one of the few spaces that does very well is federal contracting. The federal contracting sector did extremely well during the pandemic. And I think after probably utility companies, one of the safer havens is federal contracting. There's been a lot more money going into federal contracting from a capital market standpoint. And you see that in the public markets as well as the private marketplaces. If you're a private equity fund, and if you're invested in federal contractors, you typically want to expand that footprint and invest more. If you're a private equity fund that is not invested in federal contracting, you probably want to be in that space, and you probably have some initiatives to start buying your way into it. So there is a lot of activity now in the capital markets, and there's some very positive market trends. The second here, the scalability of the contract base, is really critical in any valuation. The valuation of any business, any financial asset for that matter, is a function of growth and the expectation of growth. And the more contract visibility you have is really critical. So that to have a good growth plan, to have good pipeline, to have strong backlog is all parts of that puzzle to building your enterprise value. Some of the core business fundamentals are obviously important. Everything from the management team, the customer mix, and the customer concentration we're going to talk about here in detail, and your capabilities, of course, your service offerings. And then that leads us into the fourth category of what really differentiates a business. Is there proprietary technology? Are there interesting tools that you have? Perhaps as a unique business model or a unique service offering. Why do you win contracts and why do you lose contracts? So being able to be articulate in what differentiates you as a business also drives your enterprise value. Next slide, please. One of the most exciting things I find in working in the federal contracting space is in analyzing those businesses that are there is the importance of qualitative value drivers. When I teach the subject, you can have two federal contractors, both at the Pentagon, both with $50 million of revenue, but one of those contractors can be inside creating databases to capture bad guys, and the other can be outside cutting the grass. The debits and credits are the same. If the income statement looks the same, but they're a very different value because of the qualitative aspects of those businesses. There's different clearances, different types of contracts. There's prime and sub issues. There's restricted contracts. There's these qualitative attributes in the space that really differentiate the values. Many, if not most, federal contractors have very similar profit margins. It's a very competitive space. There's a lot of transparency. If you look at the public companies, the margins are all very, very consistent and very correlated because they have the same customer. So it's from a profit standpoint, and financial metrics can often be very similar, but the valuations can be very different. We sell federal contractors and maybe 2 or 3 times EBITDA or over 25 times EBITDA. which are drastically different valuations, and that's really due to different qualitative aspects. So one area we're going to focus on today, and I think the plan is for each of these sessions, we'll focus on different value drivers, and today's focus is on customer concentration. And customer concentration in government contracting is really very complex. If you look at a commercial business, one of my old clients, probably one of my favorite clients over the years, was a commercial company focused on importing and selling marble. Think of like a marble countertop or a marble kitchen counter you might have. And he aggressively managed his customer concentration. At the time, Home Depot wanted to be his main customer. They were eager to get more marble, but he aggressively managed his business so that Home Depot was no more than 25% of his business. He did not want to be a Home Depot shop. He did not want to lose leverage to Home Depot, and he aggressively minimized that. Even though he could have gotten more revenue, he aggressively minimized it so that he could increase the value of his business and maintain the leverage and control he had with Home Depot. Government contracting, again, is a little bit different. It's more complex. We often look at it as layers of an onion. Perhaps a federal contractor has all of its revenue at the U.S. Army. So on the face of it, you might have some agency concentration. However, you got to peel that onion back. Maybe it's got 4 or 5 contracts at 4 or 5 different groups within the Army, all different contracting officers, different budgeting cycles, different procurement paths. So there actually is or can be significant or less concentration than it appears. And sometimes customer concentration is really just a function of the growth stage of the business. Maybe the business recently won maybe a large contract or 2 large contracts, so the customer contract looks out of whack, but that's really just a function of a positive growth strategy and winning contracts. So you have to look at the life of the business as well. We got a couple of clients, for example, to share. One of them just won 2 large contracts, so 50% of the business is tied up in 2 contracts. So it looks very concentrated at first blush, but again, it's different contracting officers, very different procurement paths, and also what helps that contractor build value is the other 50% of his business is about 24 other contracts. So he's got past performance and a track record of being able to win contracts. He's got lots of different seeds at those different clients that he's serving. So he can support a good growth argument, which drives value. Whereas a second client we have right now only has 2 contracts, the same contracting officer at the same agency, has never submitted a proposal for anything else, just works on those 2 contracts. It's literally just a 2-trick pony from a customer standpoint, which kind of impairs its value. It's a riskier business to own. If that contracting officer wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, it could be jeopardy for him. So customer concentration really is a significant value driver, and being able to explain it, and most importantly, I think for business owners and business development people, as you build out your backlog, as you build out your pipeline, as you decide which procurement activities to go after, there really is a lot of strategy to it. If you're about to graduate from the small business program, maybe even 4 or 5 years from now, you want to start the process of going after full and open contracts. Even though it's easier to get the small business ones, you want to start getting those processes in place and start differentiating your procurement mix, and address some of your customer concentration issues, and help diversify it. And it's hard sometimes because, again, it's easy to keep selling to Home Depot, but it can create more value to your business if you're differentiating yourself, building out other relationships, getting more vehicles in place, and differentiating your contract mix so that you have a stronger value. I don't think we're doing any Q&A this afternoon, but if you have any questions, please feel free to use our firm as a resource. Again, my name is Andy Smith at the McLean Group and can easily be reached out to. Colton, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you to our speakers and to everyone who attended the presentation today. The recording and slides will be available by close of business on Monday. We look forward to seeing you next week as we cover doing business with the United States Air Force.